Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today's Tuesday, so this is the waiver wire target video. And I'm going to be going over a number of names in this video. Typically, everybody that's going to be in this video is 50% or less rostered on both ESPN or Yahoo. There's a couple of exceptions that I did throw in here as well because I thought they were worth talking about. But if there's a name that you do not see in this video, you have a question about, be sure to leave it down in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer your question as quickly as possible. But with that being said, we're going to start off with the quarterbacks first, and we got Carson Wentz. He was 27 out of 51, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 11 yards rushing, 24.34 points in Week 8. He is rostered in 33% of ESPN leagues, 56% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the New York Jets. Should be a very favorable matchup for him this week. I believe this is the Thursday night football game as well. So Carson Wentz, if he's out there in your league, he's a decent streaming quarterback this week. I think he has another good matchup the following week too as well. So definitely somebody that you should be interested in at this point in time. He's been very, very solid so far this year, which I didn't think I'd be saying coming into the year, but outside of 1 week, he's been a very good quarterback overall. Somebody that wasn't hurt in your fantasy football team. So if you need a quarterback, you need a streaming quarterback for the next couple weeks, probably 2 to 5% of your fab budget overall. Then we move over to Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has not played the last couple weeks. He's dealing with a concussion. Jameis Winston tore his ACL, some damage to his MCL, and probably damage to his meniscus as well. When I first saw that play, I figured it was at least a torn meniscus with a likely torn ACL as well. So, unfortunately, Jameis Winston done for the year. Thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family during his time of recovery with this injury. But Taysom Hill is probably going to be the guy whenever he gets back from this concussion. We saw what he could do last year in terms of a rushing upside, and it's going to be his job probably for the rest of the year. Trevor Siemian did come in and play fairly well against the Buccaneers, but if Taysom Hill is healthy, it's going to be his job. And I do apologize. I put an N instead of an M there. I don't know how I did that, but he plays against the Atlanta Falcons in Week 9. This is a guy that has the potential to be a top 12 quarterback for the rest of the season. So if you need a quarterback, it's no better time to get a quarterback than right now with Taysom Hill. So you're probably looking at 10 to 15% of your fab budget. If you don't need a quarterback, you just need somebody to fill in this week or in the future weeks, maybe 5 to 8% of your fab budget. It just really depends on the makeup of your team overall at this point in time. And then the last quarterback we have is somebody who has also been injured, Tyrod Taylor. He's been on IR since Week 2. I believe he was active this past game. He was just considered the backup for the game technically. But supposedly he's going to be the starter when he's able to do so. He practiced last week, and it looks like he should be back this week, but we'll just have to see. Roster in about 4% of ESPN leagues, 6% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Dolphins this week if he does end up playing, so that's a matchup that I would consider streaming him if I need a quarterback to do so. But at this point in time, Tyrod Taylor, you're probably only going to have to spend like 1% of your fab budget on because he's a guy most people probably aren't going after. Then we'll get moved over to running backs. So we got to talk about Boston Scott first. So played 45% of snaps this past week, 12 carries, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very efficient day against the Lions. He only had 1 target but no receptions. He has shown a pass catching ability in the past, so we know it's something he can do. However, Kenny Gainwell is more of that pass catching back, and that's the guy that everybody expected to be the guy this week too as well. But they're playing against the Lions, ground to pound. They didn't need to throw the ball a ton. Hurt Kenny Gainwell, hurt Jalen Hurts. Boston Scott benefited from it. Jordan Howard also benefited from it as well. Do I expect Boston Scott to have this type of performance going forward? Probably not. But is he going to be like a low-end running back 2, a flex play most weeks? Probably. He's rostered in 5% of ESPN leagues, 20% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Chargers in Week 9, which is a pretty favorable matchup overall for the running back position. The biggest question mark here, are the Eagles going to commit to their run once again, or is this just a one-time thing because they were playing the Lions? If they get down in this game, they're going to have to throw the ball. Kenny Gainwell is going to look a lot better. Boston Scott, probably not so much. Jordan Howard, probably not so much. I'm tempering my expectations, but I think Boston Scott is a fine plug-in play, like bye-week filler type of running back if you needed to use him. He's probably like a 5 to 8% of my fab budget on. I probably wouldn't go up to 10%, but somebody's probably going to overpay for him if you didn't already pick him up last week. And looking by the numbers, not a lot of people picked him up last week. Then we'll talk about Jordan Howard real quick. So he played 25% of snaps. He also had 12 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. No targets, no receptions, 17.7 yards in Week 8. So pretty similar performance to Boston Scott. I do not expect this to be repeated, but I think he's definitely somebody you should pick up and stash on your bench at the very least at this point in time. His roster in 1% of ESPN leagues, 2% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against that same pretty good Chargers matchup in Week 9. So there is a path to success. But I just don't see it happening once again this week. But still somebody to have on the end of your bench and help you out. He's probably like a 2 to 3% of my fab budget type of running back this week, but somebody's probably going to overpay for him just based on the 2 touchdowns. Then we're going to talk about Ty Johnson real quick. Only played 29% of snaps this past week, 4 carries, 15 yards, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 71 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He has seen at least 5 receptions the last 2 weeks. Mike White dumping off to the running back position, definitely helping Michael Carter out, definitely helping Ty Johnson out. Plus the fact that Corey Davis didn't play in this last game too. 19.6 points in week 8. He's rostered in 5% of ESPN and Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Colts in week 9. So kind of a middle-of-the-road matchup for him overall. Probably a guy you could throw in a PPR flex league if you really, really need to do so, but not much more than that. As long as Michael Carter's there, Ty Johnson's kind of limited in what he can do overall. But has he been effective the last 2 weeks? Yes. So probably a guy that I'd be willing to spend up to 2% of my fab budget on at this point in time. Then we're going to talk about Jaret Patterson real quick. Played 23% of snaps this past week. He had 11 carries for 46 yards. He didn't have a target or reception. That should not be there. That's my mistake. I do apologize for that. He ended up with 4.6 points in week 8. Roster in 1% of ESPN leagues, 2% of Yahoo leagues, and he's on bye this week. So what we need to talk about is Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson should not have played this last week, especially if they were going to limit him the way they did. He's been dealing with that shin injury for a while. He just needs like 2 to 3 weeks to rest. So this can kind of heal up a little bit so he can make it through the rest of the season. But with Jaret Patterson here, there's a chance that Washington is not that good. They're out of contention. And then Antonio Gibson gets shut down like the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season because of his injuries. In that case, Jaret Patterson could potentially be a league winner. So this is a guy that you want to stash on the end of your bench in case Antonio Gibson doesn't play, in case he gets shut down at the end of the year. And you're probably not going to have to pay that much for him because they're on bye this week, so you're probably 1 to 2% of your fab budget. Then the running back that a lot of people probably aren't talking about this weekend is Devonta Freeman. The Ravens were on bye last week, so not too much action there. Roster in 13% of ESPN leagues, 22% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Vikings in week 9. Should be a pretty favorable matchup there as well. Yes, Latavius Murray is still there. They still have Le'Veon Bell. They still have Tyson Williams. Latavius Murray's been dealing with that ankle injury. There's been some rumors out there that said it is a high ankle sprain, so he's probably not playing again this week. So Devonta Freeman probably going to be the lead guy in that backfield. Does it mean too much? Probably not, but I feel like this is a game they should be able to kind of run away from Minnesota just a little bit, and maybe they lean on to run a little bit heavier down the stretch. But overall, pretty solid play. Guy that'd be probably like 2% of my fab budget this week overall. Then we'll move over to Adrian Peterson. This is going to be a hot topic for the week. So he just signed with the Titans. He's rostered in essentially no ESPN leagues, 6% of Yahoo leagues for some odd reason. It might just be because Yahoo lets you pick guys up like later in the week or whatever. Maybe they picked him up when he was a free agent and the news was kind of out there before he officially signed. But he plays the Rams in week 9, not a very good matchup. Not even sure he's going to be active the first week with the team, maybe even the second week with the team. Probably like a 1 to 2% of my fab budget is what I spend on him. Somebody's going to overpay for Adrian Peterson, but you just have to keep in mind he's probably going to get you like 8 to 12 points a week. It's not anything special. You know, he might get 14 carries a game. He might get you 60 yards. If he scores a touchdown, you'll be happy, but if he doesn't, you're probably not going to be too happy. We already seen Derrick Henry not get a ton of receiving work. That all went to Jeremy McNichols, and Adrian Peterson's not as good as Derrick Henry. So with that being said, he's not a guy that I really want on my team. Maybe you pick him up and you're able to trade him. That's probably the best case scenario. If you can pick him up, trade him to a running back needy team, and get something of value for him, I think that's a win in my book. But overall, not too interested in him. Not too interested in Jeremy McNichols either. Like, he might be the guy or might get like half the workload for 2 straight weeks until Adrian Peterson's ready, but I'm just not interested. Maybe they call up Mekhi Sargent from the practice squad, who had a great preseason, who was one of my favorite undrafted running back prospects. He's just not a pretty situation for the Titans. Maybe they trade for somebody else before the trade deadline today as well. That's definitely a possibility. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, that had already happened. So then we'll move over to wide receiver position. So we got Brandon Aiyuk, played 88% of snaps this past week, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 45 yards, 10.5 points. So he must have had a 2-point conversion in there as well. And then he's rostered in 46% of ESPN leagues, 51% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Cardinals in week 9. A middle of the pack matchup there, but it's great to see him playing more snaps. It's great to see him seeing more targets. Brandon Aiyuk, maybe this is the stretch run that we need from him. So Brandon Aiyuk is definitely somebody that should be picked up at this point in time. Probably like 3 to 5% of your fab budget. Maybe if you need a wide receiver, just a tick more, but not too much more than that overall. Then we'll move over to Jamison Crowder. Played 61% of snaps this past week. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 84 yards, 16.4 points in week 8. Rostered in 19% of both ESPN and Yahoo leagues. He goes against the Indianapolis Colts this week. That is a little bit of a typo there from the Arizona Cardinals. The Colts have a tough slot corner in Kenny Moore, so that could hurt Jamison Crowder just a little bit, but Mike White really locked onto him this past week. If he's starting once again, if Corey Davis ain't out there, Jamison Crowder looking like a fine play once again this week. So probably a guy to spend 3 to 5% of my fab budget overall on. Then next up is Van Jefferson. He played 84% of snaps, so a big snap share once again this week, even though it was kind of a blowout, so that might have affected things just a little bit, but he was over 90% the week before as well. 6 targets, 3 receptions, 88 yards, 11.8 points in week 8. So he's been in double-digit points quite a few times this year, especially for a wide receiver 3 on a team. Rostered 9% ESPN leagues, 12% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Titans in week 9, which is one of the best matchups you can pretty much ask for at this point in time. So Van Jefferson, he could be in play as soon as this week. I'd be comfortable spending up to 3% of my fab budget on him. Maybe if you're a wide receiver in a team, you just spend just a little bit more on him as well. Then we'll talk about Rashod Bateman once again. He's on bye week 8, roster in 20% of ESPN leagues, 31% of Yahoo leagues, goes against the Vikings in week 9. Should be a pretty favorable matchup there as well. Obviously, we've seen him see like 6 targets in both the games he's played so far this year. Could have a little bit of upside, but at this point, it's still a little bit of a question mark. Sammy Watkins could be back as well. Probably a 1 to 2% of your fab budget type of guy, a guy that you're going to stash on the end of your bench and see if he turns into something more down the stretch. Then we move over to tight end position. We got Dan Arnold, played 72% of snaps this past week, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 68 yards, 14.8 points in week 8. Rostered in only 4% of ESPN and 4% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Buffalo Bills in week 9, who are a relatively good team against tight ends overall. So not the best matchup in the world for him, but the last 3 games, he's got 23 targets, and you're not going to see too many tight ends that you can pick up off the waiver wire that have that amount of targets. Looks like Trevor Lawrence trusts him. They like him in this offense. So why not pick up Dan Arnold at this point? So probably 2% of my fab budget is what I'd be willing to spend on him this week. A streaming tight end that maybe turns into a little bit more. Then we have Pat Freiermuth, played 78% of snaps this past week, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 44 yards, 1 touchdown, 14.4 points in week 8. Roster in 8% of ESPN leagues, 10% of Yahoo leagues. Goes against the Chicago Bears in week 9, which is a very favorable matchup. And Freiermuth's a guy, since Juju Smith-Schuster's gone, he's been playing a little bit in that slot. It's going to be a role that favors him quite a bit. I think he has some long-term value going forward. Might just be a little bit up and down week to week. But, at this point in time, what tight end isn't up and down? So Pat Freiermuth, definitely worth the pickup. Probably spend up to 3% of my fab budget on him this week. Then last but not least, I want to mention Foster Moreau. He had a bye last week. Roster in 2% of ESPN leagues, 1% of Yahoo leagues. So this is a guy that you either want to pay 1% of your fab budget on or pick up after waivers run. There is a chance that Darren Waller is still injured and does not play this week. Doesn't sound like it's likely that he's going to miss, but if he ends up missing, Foster Moreau will play 100% of snaps the game that he missed. Goes against the Giants, which is a favorable matchup in week 9. You might get a free square at tight end for 1 week, so if you need a streaming tight end this week, Foster Moreau, take a look at him. If you're a Darren Waller owner, also take a look at him just in case Darren Waller does not play. Then last but not least, we got the defenses to consider for this week. So the Dallas Cowboys goes against Denver Broncos. They are rostered in 49% of ESPN leagues, 58% of Yahoo leagues. It's about a 50-50 chance that they're out there. Looking pretty good matchup overall. I do not trust Teddy Bridgewater or this Denver offense overall. Garrett Bowles might miss in this game. They are apparently in selling mode as well, so maybe they trade away a couple other pieces that they do have on their offense, and maybe their offense looks even worse than it's looked most of the season. Then next up's the Miami Dolphins. They're rostered in about 12% of leagues between ESPN and Yahoo. They go against Houston Texans this week. My Texans have not been good on offense. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that you want to play the defense going against the Texans pretty much on a weekly basis at this point in time. If Tyrod Taylor ends up playing, that may change just a little bit though. Then on the opposite side of that game, I like the Houston Texans defense this week. They are essentially not rostered on ESPN or Yahoo, so there's a very, very good chance that they're out there. You probably don't even have to spend any of your fab budget on this Houston Texans defense. And that Miami offense has been terrible this year. Like, Tua hasn't been good. He's making bad throws. Like, he's making bad interceptions. Their offensive line doesn't pass block very well. Say what you want about the Texans defense, but they've been able to get some sacks. They've been able to get some turnovers. So there is an opportunity here at the end of the day. For the Dolphins defense, probably spend 1%. And then the Cowboys defense, probably like 3% if I need to go there. But with that being said, that's all I have for the waiver wire video this week. If you guys have any questions related to waivers, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. If there's anyone you think I missed, let me know down in the comments as well, and we'll talk about them down there too. But with that being said, if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. It helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your fantasy football teams, helping you with DFS, whether it's NFL or NBA. Talking a little bit of injury news, probably going to be talking some trade deadline news tomorrow in the starts and sits video for the Thursday Night Football matchup. And then with that being said, if you are a new or current subscriber is yet to do so, also hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every single time I post up a new video. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed. And then last but not least, special little shout out to each and every one of you watching today's video. I truly do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.